13 years. Stolen. She didn't abandon us. She loved us when no one else did.
My name is Sandra Rivers, and at 60 years old I carry a truth carved deep into my bones. Some wounds never mend. They don't fade with time. They don't soften with forgiveness. They calcify, hardening into something sharper, colder, more useful than bone itself. 13 years. That's how long it has been since I last felt the small, warm weight of my grandchildren in my arms. 13 years since their faces became forbidden treasures glimpsed only in stolen fragments. Social media photos erased the instant they realized I was watching. 13 years since Victoria, my daughter-in-law, wove her poison so skillfully into James's me. The morning everything changed began deceptively ordinary. I sat in my penthouse apartment, high above the restless city, sipping coffee from bone china so fine it seemed translucent when the sunlight caught it. The porcelain cup alone cost more than most people's monthly wages. Beside me, a stack of financial reports lay neatly arranged, columns of numbers confirming what I already knew. Rivers Textiles, the company I built from ashes and grief, had become an empire worth $15 million. $15 million. Every dollar wrestled out of 18-hour days, every cent purchased with holidays spent alone, with nights staring into silence while others slept. I had built this not merely for survival. I built it because I understood that in the end, money was more than security, it was a weapon. And with Victoria, only one language mattered: power measured in dollars. At precisely 9 a.m., the phone rang, as it always did. Patricia, my secretary, her voice glowing with warmth. "Congratulations, Mrs. Rivers. The sale has gone through. Hartman Industries purchased for exactly your price, every cent of it." I allowed myself a small smile she couldn't see. "Patricia, I was already wealthy. Now I am free. Free to execute the plan I had been shaping for over a decade. Free to reclaim what was stolen, not with fury, but with precision." I leaned back in my chair, eyes drifting across the blueprints spread before me. Architectural plans for a new home, though, calling it a home, felt inadequate. It was an estate. 15 bedrooms, grand guest wings, staff quarters, a pool house. Not merely a residence, but a declaration carved in stone and glass. A kingdom of my own. The sharp chime of the doorbell fractured the stillness. I glanced at the security monitor, and my breath caught. Victoria. 3 years had passed since I had last seen her in person, but there she was, standing at my door. At 38, she remained beautiful, but it was a beauty curated, purchased, painted on with careful precision. Sleek blonde hair, tailored designer suit, posture honed into effortless arrogance. And yet, in her eyes, something cracked through the gloss. Not confidence, not triumph, desperation. I rose deliberately, smoothing the front of my dress, adjusting my pearl necklace, running a hand across my silver hair until every strand was perfect. Because I had learned, true power does not hurry. True power makes others wait. When I opened the door, my voice was silk with steel beneath. "Victoria?" What an unexpected surprise. Her smile unfurled like a weapon polished for use. "Sandra," she said sweetly, "I hope you don't mind me dropping by. I heard about your business sale. Congratulations." "Thank you," I replied, letting curiosity sharpen my tone. "Though tell me, how did you hear so quickly?" She laughed, a brittle sound like ice breaking. "Good news travels fast in certain circles. May I come in?" Every instinct screamed against it, but I stepped aside, and with deliberate grace, Victoria crossed the threshold of my home. In that moment, I knew the war I had been preparing for 13 years had finally come to my door. She drifted across my living room as if she already owned it, fingertips grazing the carved edge of my antique mantelpiece, eyes flicking to the worth of every object. "Beautiful place," she said lightly. "Though I imagine you'll be moving soon with all that money." I remained composed. "I'm planning some changes, yes. That's actually why I'm here." She turned, and I saw it happen, the shift. Polite guest vanished, predator revealed. "James and I have been talking, and we think it's time to put the past behind us. Do you?" Her smile widened, carefully rehearsed. The twins are 17 now, they'll be going off to college soon, and James feels, well, he feels they should know their grandmother before they leave home. The twins, Alex and Lily, children I last held at 4 years old, children who had grown into young adults while I collected scraps of their lives through school newsletters, newspaper clippings, award announcements, all from a distance, all through glass. How generous of James, I said evenly, to finally remember he has a mother. Victoria's smile faltered for the briefest moment. Sandra, I know there have been misunderstandings. Misunderstandings? My voice snapped, sharper than I intended. Is that what you call it when you poisoned my son against me? When you dragged him across the country to keep my grandchildren from me? When you returned every birthday card unopened? Her voice softened. That's all in the past. We want to move forward. I walked to the window, looking out over the city I had conquered brick by brick, dollar by dollar. In the reflection, I saw her behind me, eyes scanning, calculating, assessing value. And what exactly are you proposing, Victoria? She didn't hesitate. We think you should move in with us. I turned slowly, every gesture deliberate. Move in with you? Yes. The house in Westfield is so big. There's plenty of room. The twins would love getting to know you. And you could help out with, well, with things. I almost laughed. Things like money. Things like preserving the lifestyle she could no longer afford. And why would I want to do that? Because we're family, she pressed. Because James misses you, even if he won't admit it. Because you've missed so much with the twins. This would be your chance to make up for lost time. Make up for lost time, I repeated softly, as though 13 stolen years were mine to atone for. And where would I live in this arrangement? She smiled too quickly. The pool house would be perfect, private but close to the family. The pool house, not the main house, not where family belonged, servants' quarters. A gilded exile. I smiled, the smile I used in boardrooms when men thought they had outsmarted me. That's very thoughtful of you, Victoria, but I'm afraid I already have other plans. Her eyes flickered. Other plans? Yes. I've purchased a new home, quite substantial. 15 bedrooms, guest wings, staff quarters. I'll be moving there next week. For the first time, the color drained from her face. 15 bedrooms? That's rather large for one person. Yes, it is, I said smoothly. But then again, I'm hoping it won't always be just one person. I let the implication hang. She calculated quickly, masking her panic. The twins will love visiting, she offered. Though of course with school and activities, they're busy. Of course. 17-year-olds always are. I crossed to my desk, lifted the leather portfolio containing my new estate's blueprints, and opened it with ceremony. Would you like to see it? She leaned forward before she could stop herself. Her eyes widened as the drawings unfolded before her. My God, she whispered. This must have cost several million. Yes, I answered, voice firm. But money is never an object when it comes to family. Her head snapped up, startled by the word. Family? My grandchildren, Victoria. The family you've stolen from me for 13 years. The family I intend to reclaim. Her mask shattered. For the first time, fear flickered naked across her perfect face. Sandra, she whispered, what exactly are you planning? I closed the portfolio and walked to the door, holding it open in dismissal. I'm planning to be the grandmother I was never allowed to be. I'm planning to give Alex and Lily everything they've been denied. I'm planning to show them what real family looks like. She gathered her purse, shaken, and as she stepped out, I added quietly, Oh, and Victoria, thank you for the pool house suggestion. I'll keep it in mind when I decide where to house my staff. The door closed with a soft click. But I knew this was only the beginning. Victoria had made a mistake coming here. She had revealed too much her desperation, her weakness, her dwindling resources. She thought she could manipulate my love for my grandchildren into servitude. What she didn't understand was that love, when sharpened into a weapon, is more devastating than any fortune. I returned to my desk and pulled out a different folder. This one was older, worn from years of being opened and added to. School records, newspaper clippings, academic awards, social media screenshots. Every trace of Alex and Lily I could collect from the shadows. It was time to step out of the shadows. Not as the bitter grandmother Victoria painted me to be, but as the woman I truly am, loving, powerful, unbroken. The war for my grandchildren had begun. and I would win. If you've ever been told you're too old to start over, hear me. That is a lie. Your story isn't finished. You still have chapters left to write. Our best-selling book, Reclaiming Your Peace After Pain, is filled with simple but powerful steps to help you heal, rebuild, and fall in love with life again. Click the link in the description and begin your new beginning today. And if Sandra's strategy has already given you chills, trust me, you're only at the beginning. Like this video, subscribe, and stay with us for more stories of women who refuse to let anyone else write their ending. That night, I sat alone in my study, surrounded by relics of 13 stolen years, photo albums ending abruptly at 4, birthday cards returned unopened, Christmas gifts still in boxes, waiting for a day that never came. And in my mind, the last real conversation with my son replayed again and again. 3 days after his father's funeral, James had called me. His voice was cold, unfamiliar. "Mom, Victoria thinks it would be best if we took some space. The kids are confused about Grandpa's death, and she feels like having too many people around is making it harder for them to process. James, they need their family right now. They need stability and love. They have that. They have Victoria and me. What about me? I'm their grandmother. Victoria is their mother. She knows what's best for them. Victoria knows what's best." Those 5 words had haunted me for over a decade. The moment I realized my son had chosen his wife over the woman who'd raised him, I pulled out my laptop and opened the folder I'd labeled grandchildren. Hundreds of photos gathered from school websites, social media accounts of their friends, local newspaper coverage of academic achievements. It was a heartbreaking collection of milestones. Observed from afar, Alex at 12 winning the state science fair, Lily at 14 performing in her school's production of Romeo and Juliet, birthday parties I wasn't invited to, graduations I watched from the back of auditoriums, Christmas mornings that happened without me. But as I studied the photos, I began to see something else. In the candid shots, in the unguarded moments between poses, I saw something that gave me hope. Neither twin looked particularly happy. Alex, brilliant and serious, seemed isolated, even in group photos. Lily, artistic and sensitive, had developed the kind of guarded expression that spoke of someone who'd learned not to trust too easily. They looked like children who'd been controlled rather than loved, managed rather than nurtured. They looked like James had looked when he was their age, before I'd learned to balance discipline with warmth, before I'd understood that love meant listening as much as teaching. My phone rang, interrupting my painful nostalgia. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Rivers, this is Patricia Hartman from Hartman Industries. I hope I'm not calling too late. Not at all. How can I help you? I wanted to follow up on our conversation earlier about your philanthropic interests. You mentioned wanting to support educational programs for gifted students. I smiled, remembering the careful conversation we and Dare had during the final stages of a sale. Patricia Hartman was a woman who understood the value of strategic generosity. Yes, I'm particularly interested in programs that support advanced mathematics and creative writing. Why do you ask? My daughter attends Westfield Academy, the same school your grandchildren attend. I believe they're launching a new enrichment program this fall, and they're looking for sponsors. Westfield Academy, where Alex was, reportedly excelling in advanced physics, and Lily was the editor of the literary magazine. Tell me more about this program. It's designed for their most gifted students. Accelerated research, projects, mentorship opportunities, college preparation beyond what they normally offer. They're looking for someone to endow the program, provide funding for equipment, maybe even mentor some of the students directly. I was already reaching for my checkbook. What kind of funding are we talking about? They were hoping for a H100,000 initially, but honestly, they'd be thrilled with anything. Patricia, tell them I'll provide $250,000 for the initial endowment, plus whatever additional support the students need. Equipment, supplies, college counseling, whatever it takes. There was a pause. That's incredibly generous. Sandra, They'll be over the moon. There is one condition, of course. I'd like to be personally involved in the selection process for the participants, and I'd like to mentor some of the students. Myself, particularly those interested in business and entrepreneurship. I'm sure they'd welcome that. Your experience building your company would be invaluable to these kids. After I hung up, I sat back in my chair with a satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. Victoria thought she could keep my grandchildren from me by controlling access to my son. What she didn't understand was that there were other ways to reach them, ways that would make me not the bitter grandmother they'd been taught to avoid, but the successful, generous woman they might actually want to know. I opened my laptop and began researching Westfield Academy more thoroughly. Their website showed photos of recent events, and there they were, Alex and Lily Rivers, photographed at the Academic Excellence Awards ceremony. Alex had won first place in the regional science competition. Lily had received the Creative Writing Award for her poetry collection. They were brilliant, these grandchildren I'd never been allowed to know. And if Victoria thought she could keep me away from them by putting walls around the family home, she was about to learn that some walls could be climbed by those determined enough to try. I spent the rest of the night planning my approach, not the desperate, demanding tactics of a rejected grandmother, but the strategic patience of a woman who'd built an empire from nothing. Victoria had made one crucial error in her calculations. She'd assumed that after 13 years of exile, I'd grown weak with grief and loneliness. Instead, I'd grown strong with purpose. And now it was time to show her exactly what that purpose could accomplish. 3 weeks later, I stood in the marble foyer of my new mansion, watching the interior designers put the finishing touches on what could only be described as a palace of possibilities. 15,000 square ft of Georgian elegance, with soaring ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and enough space to house a small army. The mansion sat on 5 acres, in the most exclusive neighborhood in the city, the same neighborhood where James and Victoria lived, though their modest colonial seemed almost quaint compared to my new residence. "The library is ready for your inspection, Mrs. Rivers," called Margaret, the head interior designer. I followed her to what had once been 3 separate rooms, now opened into a magnificent space with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, Persian rugs, and comfortable reading chairs positioned near tall windows that overlooked the gardens. "It's perfect," I said, running my hand along the mahogany desk that would serve as my workspace. "What about the guest wings? Both fully furnished and ready. Each has its own sitting room, bedroom, and private bath, perfect for extended visits." Extended visits. Exactly what I had in mind. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia Hartman. "Westfield Academy Board approved your proposal unanimously. They'd like to meet with you next week to discuss implementation. Students will be selected by the end of the month." I smiled, typing back, "Excellent. I'm particularly interested in reviewing applications from students with surnames beginning with R." The meeting at Westfield Academy was everything I'd hoped for and more. The headmaster, Dr. William Foster, was a distinguished man in his 62nd who clearly understood the value of generous benefactors. "Mrs. Rivers," he said, standing as I entered his office, "we cannot thank you enough for your generosity. This endowment will transform our ability to serve our most gifted students. Education is the greatest investment we can make in the future," I replied, settling into the leather chair across from his desk. "I'm particularly interested in mentoring students who show entrepreneurial potential." "Wonderful. We've already begun reviewing NAVER applications, and I think you'll be impressed by the caliber of our students." He handed me a stack of files, the top 2 bearing the names I'd been waiting to see, Alexander Rivers and Lillian Rivers. I kept my expression neutral as I opened Alex's file. Straight A's in advanced mathematics and science, leader of the robotics team, accepted into MIT's early admission program. His personal essay spoke of wanting to build technologies that solve real-world problems. Lily's file was equally impressive. Editor of the literary magazine, winner of multiple poetry competitions, already published, and in several teen literary journals. Her essay described her passion for using words to illuminate truth and create connection. These two students, I said, tapping their files. They seem exceptional. Oh yes, Alex and Lily Rivers. They're among our brightest, though I must say they're also among our most reserved students. Reserved, polite, well, behaved, excellent students, but they seem to have built walls around themselves. Lily especially, she's brilliant, but she seems to carry some sadness. Alex is similar, though he hides it behind academic achievement. I study their photos. Alex with his serious dark eyes, and Lily with her artistic, thoughtful expression. They looked like children who'd learned early that showing vulnerability was dangerous. I'd like to invite both of them to participate in the program, I said, along with perhaps 6 other students. Excellent choice. I'll have them contacted immediately. That evening, I sat in my new library, surrounded by the tools of my patient, revenge. I'd had my assistant compile detailed profiles of both twins, their interests, their achievements, their social media activity, limited and carefully curated, and most importantly, their schedule of extracurricular activities. The next phase of my plan required perfect timing and careful orchestration. Victoria had spent 13 years painting me as the bitter, rejected grandmother. Now I needed to show Alex and Lily who I really was. Successful, generous, and genuinely interested in their futures. My phone. It rang at 8 p.m. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but when I answered, I heard a voice that made my heart skip. Mrs. Rivers. This is Alex Rivers from Westfield Academy. My grandson calling me directly. Alex, I said, keeping my voice warm but professional. What a pleasant surprise. How can I help you, doctor? Foster said, you're the sponsor of the new enrichment program, and that you might be willing to mentor some of the students. I am. Indeed. I understand you're interested in technology and engineering. Yes, ma'am. I'm working on a project involving sustainable energy solutions for urban environments. Dr. Foster. Thought you might be able to provide some guidance on the business applications. Business applications. My brilliant grandson wanted to learn about turning innovation into impact. I'd be happy to discuss your project, Alex. Would you? I'd like to meet for coffee sometime this week. I'd love to hear more about your ideas. There was a pause, and I could practically hear him weighing his decision. That would be great, though. I should probably ask my parents first. Of course, why don't you discuss it with them and let me know what works for your family? After we hung up, I sat back in my chair with a smile. The first move had been made, and it hadn't come from me. It had come from Alex himself. Victoria couldn't object to a meeting that was part of an official school program, particularly one I was funding so generously. 2 days later, Alex called back. My parents said it would be fine to meet with you about the program, though my mom wanted me to make sure it was during school hours and at the school, Victoria's conditions. She was trying to control the situation while still allowing the meeting she couldn't reasonably forbid. Of course, I said. Why don't we meet in the school library tomorrow afternoon? And Alex, feel free to invite your sister if she's interested. I understand she's also part of the program. The next afternoon, I arrived at Westfield Academy dressed in a navy business suit and my grandmother's pearls. I carried a leather portfolio filled with information about entrepreneurship and innovation, but more importantly, I carried 13 years of love and longing to finally meet my grandchildren as the successful woman I'd become. I was sitting in the library when they arrived. Alex, tall and serious, Lily, petite with long dark hair and intelligent eyes. They approached my table hesitantly, and for a moment I forgot to breathe. Mrs. Rivers, Alex said softly. Please call me Sandra, I said, standing to shake their hands. Thank you both for taking the time to meet with me. As we sat down, I studied their faces, seeing traces of James as a child, echoes of my late husband's features, but most of all, seeing two remarkable young people who'd grown up without me. Dr. Foster says you're interested in business applications for technology, I said to Alex, opening my portfolio. Tell me about your sustainable energy project. As Alex began describing his ideas, complex, innovative, brilliant ideas, I saw Lily watching me carefully, studying my birth reactions, trying to understand who this woman was that their mother had kept them from. And you, Lily, I said when Alex finished. I understand you're a gifted writer. What kind of writing interests you most? Poetry, mostly, she said quietly, and personal essays. I like writing about real experiences, about truth. My literary granddaughter was interested in truth in a family where lies had shaped her entire childhood. I'd love to read some of your work sometime, I said. I've always believed that writing is one of the most powerful ways to change the world. For the first time, Lily smiled, a small, tentative smile that broke my heart with its beauty. We talked for 2 hours about their dreams, their goals, their hopes for college and beyond. They were brilliant, both of them, but there was something guarded in their demeanor, something that spoke of children who'd learned to be careful with their trust. As we prepared to leave, Lily asked quietly, Mrs. Rivers, why haven't we met before now? The question hung in the air like a challenge. I could feel Alex watching me, waiting for my answer. Sometimes, I said carefully, families go through difficult periods. Adults make decisions that affect everyone, and children get caught in the middle. But I'm here now, and I hope we can get to know each other better. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was the beginning of truth. More truth than they'd probably been given about me in 13 years. As I watched them walk away, I felt something I hadn't experienced in over a decade. Hope mixed with determination. The first seeds had been planted. Now it was time to help them grow. Victoria's reaction to my involvement in the twin school was swift and predictable. 2 days after my meeting with Alex and Lily, she appeared at my new mansion unannounced, her composure significantly less intact than during a previous visit. I was in my garden supervising the installation of a greenhouse and art studio, additions I'd specifically designed with my grandchildren in mind, when Thomas, my new groundskeeper, announced her arrival. There's a woman at the gate, ma'am, says her name is Victoria Rivers, and that she needs to speak with you urgently. Through the security monitor, I could see her pacing behind the wrought iron gates, her designer handbag clutched like a weapon, and her usually perfect hair showing signs of distress. Let her in, Thomas, and please have Maria prepare tea in the sunroom. I took my time walking to the house, allowing Victoria to wait in the marble foyer while I changed from my gardening clothes into something more appropriate for confrontation. A cream-colored cashmere sweater, gray wool trousers, and my pearls, the armor of a woman who'd learned that looking unruffled was essential when dealing with enemies. Victoria was examining the oil paintings in my foyer when I descended the staircase, her eyes calculating their task worth with a practiced assessment of someone who'd grown up measuring everything by its price tag. Victoria, I said warmly, what a lovely surprise. Please come into the sunroom. I've had tea prepared. The sunroom was my favorite space in the new house. Floor to ceiling windows overlooking the gardens, comfortable furniture arranged for intimate conversation, and fresh flowers from my greenhouse creating an atmosphere of cultivated elegance. Your house is Victoria paused, clearly struggling to find words that wouldn't reveal her jealousy. Quite impressive. Thank you. I wanted to create a space where family could feel welcome. She flinched at the word family and I smiled, inwardly. Sandra, I need to talk to you about the twins. Of course, they're remarkable young people. You should be very proud. I am proud. That's why I'm concerned about this mentorship program you've gotten them involved in. I poured tea into delicate china cups, taking my time with the ritual. Concerned? I would. I think you'd be pleased that they're receiving additional support for their education. Support from their grandmother who hasn't been part of their lives. There it was, the accusation disguised as concern, the attempt to make me the villain in a story she'd been crafting for 13 years, haven't been part of their lives, I repeated thoughtfully. That's an interesting way to phrase it, as if I made the choice to be absent. That's not what I meant, do I? Because from my perspective, I've tried repeatedly to be part of their lives, only to be blocked at every turn. Victoria set down her teacup with a sharp clink. This isn't about the past, Sandra. This is about what's best for Alex and Lily now. And you've determined that having a successful, loving grandmother in their lives isn't what's best for them. I've determined that confusing them with divided loyalties isn't what's best for them. Divided loyalties, the phrase revealed everything about how Victoria viewed family relationships as competitions rather than connections. Victoria, are you afraid that if Alex and Lily get to know me, they might question the story they've been told about why I've been absent from their lives? Her face flushed red. There's no story, Sandra. There are just facts. Facts? Like the fact that I've sent birthday cards every year that were returned unopened, or the fact that I've tried to call on holidays only to find my number blocked, or perhaps the fact that I've been contributing to a college fund for both children that you've been accessing without their knowledge. She went pale. How do you know about I know? About a lot of things, Victoria, including the fact that James's graphic design business has been struggling for the past 3 years, and that you've been using my contributions to maintain a lifestyle you can no longer afford. You have no right. I have every right to know where my money goes, especially when it's meant for my grandchildren's future. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gardens where I hoped Alex and Lily might someday walk with me. Here's what I think is really happening, I continued without turning around. You're realizing that the financial cushion you've been living on is disappearing. James's business isn't recovering. Your own career never materialized, and you're facing the prospect of actually having to work for a living instead of relying on my generosity. That's not, and now you discover that not only have I sold my company for $15 million, but I'm actively building relationships with the children you've kept for me. Children who are almost adults and will soon be making their own decisions about who they want in their lives. I turned back to face her and saw fear in her eyes. Raw, undisguised fear. You're terrified that they might choose me, Victoria shot to her feet. I'm their mother. I raised them. I've been there for every scraped knee, every school play, every heartbreak. Yes, you have, and I'm grateful to you for that. My calm response seemed to deflate her anger slightly. You are, of course. You've done an excellent job raising them. They're brilliant, accomplished, well-behaved young people. But Victoria, being their mother doesn't mean you have to be their only family. It does when that family is toxic. Toxic? I laughed, softly. Is that what you've told them about me? That I'm toxic? She had the grace to look slightly ashamed. I've protected them from unnecessary confusion and hurt by lying to them about who I am and why I've been absent from their lives. I've never lied to them, haven't you? What exactly have you told them about me, Victoria? She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her calculating how much truth she could safely reveal. I've told them that you disapproved of me from the beginning, that you tried to break up James and me, that when we moved to give our family a fresh start, you chose to cut us off rather than accept our decision. I see. And the birthday cards, the phone calls, the college fund, they don't know about those things. Of course they don't, because those facts would complicate the narrative you've created. I walked back to my chair and sat down, pouring myself another cup of tea. Victoria, let me be very clear about something. I'm not going away. I'm not going to disappear quietly while you continue to keep my grandchildren from me. They're 17 years old enough to make their own decisions about relationships, old enough to handle the truth about family dynamics. What are you saying? I'm saying that you can either work with me to gradually build a healthy relationship with Alex and Lily, or you can continue to fight me and risk them discovering the truth on their own. What truth? That their grandmother has loved them desperately for 13 years. that she's built an empire partly in hopes of being able to provide for them someday, that she's never stopped trying to be part of their lives despite being blocked at every turn. Victoria sank back into her chair, looking suddenly smaller and more fragile. "They love me," she whispered. "I'm their mother. Yes, you are, and nothing I do will ever change that, but they can love both of us. Victoria, love isn't finite. You want them to choose." "How, you over me?" "No," I said firmly. "I want them to know they don't have to choose at all." But even as I said the words, I knew they weren't entirely true. Because if Victoria continued to fight me, if she continued to try to poison my relationship with my grandchildren, then, yes, I would make them choose. And I intended to make sure they chose correctly. The change in Alex and Lily was subtle at first, but unmistakable to someone who'd been watching them as carefully as I had. Over the following weeks, they began reaching out, independently. Alex with questions about business strategy, Lily with requests for feedback on her writing. I was careful to maintain appropriate boundaries, always meeting them at school or in public places, always keeping Victoria informed of our interactions. But with each conversation, I could see them growing, more curious about the woman they'd been kept from knowing. "Mrs. Rivers, Lily," said one afternoon as we sat in the Westfield Academy library, "can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Why? Did you really start your textile company?" I sat down the collection of her poems I'd been reading. Remarkable. Work full of insight and emotional depth that spoke of an old soul in a deva. One 7-year-old body. "That's a complicated question with a simple answer." I said I started it because I had to survive. "What do you mean?" I studied her face, seeing genuine curiosity rather than the polite interest she'd shown in our earlier meetings. "When your grandfather died, he left behind more debts than assets. I had a choice. I could accept charity and live modestly, or I could build something that would ensure I never had to depend on anyone else. Again, you chose independence. I chose power. There's a difference." She leaned forward, intrigued. "What kind of difference?" "Independence means you can take care of yourself. Power means you can take care of the people you love, whether they want you to or not." I watched her process this distinction, seeing her writer's mind cataloging the nuance. "Is that what you're doing now? Taking care of people whether they want you to or not?" Smart girl. Too smart for her own good, perhaps. "What do you think I'm doing?" "I think you're trying to get to know Alex and me despite Mom not wanting you to." "And how does that make you feel?" Lily was quiet for a long moment, staring out the library window at the courtyard where other students were eating lunch and laughing with the carelessness of teenagers who'd never had to navigate family landmines. "Confused," she said finally. "Mom always said you weren't interested in being a grandmother, that you chose your career over family. And what do you think now?" "I think if someone builds a $15 million company and then sells it to spend time mentoring teenagers, they probably didn't choose career over family. They probably chose career for family." I felt my heart swell with pride and love for this perceptive young woman who'd inherited not just my husband's eyes, but his ability to see through people's facades to their true motivations. "You're very wise for 17, I said softly. "I've had to be. Our family doesn't exactly encourage questions." That single sentence revealed more about their home life than months of observation could have. In a family where questions weren't encouraged, children learned to find their own answers, and sometimes those answers weren't the ones their parents wanted them to find. "Lily, can I tell you something your father probably doesn't remember?" She nodded. "When he was about your age, he went through a phase where he questioned everything. My rules, my expectations, my decisions. It drove me crazy at the time, but looking back, I realized it was the moment he started becoming his own person. What happened? I learned to trust him to make good decisions, even when those decisions weren't the ones I would have made. Did he make good decisions? I thought about James choosing Victoria. about the 13 years of arrangement, about the grandchildren I'd missed watching grow up. Some of them, I said carefully, but even the ones I disagreed with taught him important lessons about consequences and accountability. That afternoon, Alex joined us for what had become our weekly mentoring session. He arrived carrying a thick folder of research and looking more animated than I'd seen him since our first meeting. "I've been working on the business plan you suggested," he said, spreading papers across the library table for turning my sustainable energy project into an actual company. As he walked me through his projections, his market analysis, and his plans for scaling production, I felt a fierce pride in this brilliant young man who'd inherited his grandfather's analytical mind and his father's creative problem-solving abilities. "This is exceptional work, Alex," I said when he finished. "Have you shown this to your parents?" His enthusiasm dimmed slightly. I tried to talk to Dad about it, but he's been pretty stressed about his own business lately. "And Mom?" He glanced at Lily, who gave him an encouraging nod. "Mom thinks I should focus on getting into MIT instead of getting distracted by entrepreneurial fantasies, Victoria's dismissive phrase revealed everything about her understanding of ambition and innovation. "What do you think?" I asked. "Do you think your ideas are fantasies?" "I think they're possibilities," he said firmly. "I think if I don't try to make them real, I'll always wonder what might have happened. Then you should try. The worst that can happen is you'll learn valuable lessons about business and innovation. The best that can happen is you'll change the world." Lily smiled at her brother. "See, I told you grandmother would understand." Grandmother, not Mrs. Rivers or Sandra, but grandmother. The word hung in the play, air like a gift, and I felt tears prick my eyes. "Is that okay?" Lily asked, quickly, seeing my emotional response. "Calling you grandmother? I mean, if it makes things weird with Mom. It makes me happier than you can possibly imagine," I said softly. "And, Lily, you don't need anyone's permission to acknowledge family relationships." That evening, I was in my library working on investment strategies when my phone rang. James's name appeared on the caller ID, the first time he'd called me directly in over 2 years. "Hello, James." "Mom." His voice was tight with controlled anger. "We need to talk." "Of course. Would you like to come over?" "I'm not coming to your house. Meet me at Meridian Coffee tomorrow at noon." He hung up before I could respond, but I was smiling. Victoria had clearly told him about the twins calling me grandmother, and he was angry enough to break his own rule about not communicating with me. Perfect. The next day, I arrived at Meridian Coffee, 15 minutes early, choosing a corner table where we could speak privately. James arrived exactly on time, looking older than his 39 years and carrying the weight of someone who'd been making compromises too long. He'd inherited his father's height and dark hair, but there was something diminished about him that hadn't been there in his 22nd. The confident young man who'd once dreamed of becoming a renowned graphic designer had been replaced by someone who looked perpetually tired and vaguely defeated. "Mom," he said, sitting down across from me without preamble, "you need to back off." "Hello to you too, James. You look well. Don't..." His voice was sharp. "Don't pretend this is a social call. Victoria told me what you said to her, and I'm telling you to stay away from my kids." "Your kids? When did they become exclusively yours?" "They've always been mine and Victoria's. You forfeited any claim to them when you chose to cut us out of your life." I stared at him across the small table. This man I'd raised and loved and lost to someone else's poison. "Is that really what you believe happened, James? That I chose to cut you out?" "I know what happened. I lived it. You lived Victoria's version of it. But since you're here, why don't you tell me what you remember? I remember you disapproving of Victoria from the moment I introduced her to you. I was concerned about some of her behaviors. Yes, you tried to break us up. I suggested you might want to take more time getting to know each other before making permanent commitments. You refused to accept our relationship. I refused to pretend I thought it was healthy when she was isolating you from your friends and family." James's jaw tightened. "She never isolated me from anyone." Really? When was the last time you spoke to your college roommate David, or your cousin Michael, or any of the friends you had before you met Victoria? He was quiet, but I could see him, thinking, when was the last time you made a major decision without asking Victoria's permission first? I continued, when was the last time you pursued one of your own interests that she didn't share? Marriage is about compromise. Marriage is about partnership, James. Compromise suggests that both people give up things they want for the good of the relationship. What has Victoria given up for you? Again, silence. I'll tell you what I see, I said, leaning forward. I see a brilliant, creative man who spent 15 years making himself smaller and smaller to fit into someone else's vision of who he should be. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? Your graphic design business is failing because you've been trying to build it according to Victoria's ideas about what constitutes respectable work. Instead of following your own creative vision, his face went pale. How do you know about my business? I know because I care about you, James. I've always cared about you. Even when you decided I was the enemy, you are the enemy. You're trying to turn my children against their mother. I'm trying to give my grandchildren the chance to know their grandmother, the same chance you had with your own grandparents who loved you unconditionally and helped shape you into the good man you became before you forgot who you were. James stood up, abruptly, his chair scraping against the coffee shop floor. Stay away from Alex. And Lily. Mom, I mean it. Or what, James? You'll cut off communication with me. Stop the twins from seeing me. Make me disappear from their lives. I stood up as well, matching his intensity with my own quiet determination. You've already tried all of those things, and yet here we are. Your children sought me out, James. They came to me because they were curious about the grandmother they'd never been allowed to know. They're confused. They're intelligent. There's a difference. I reached into my purse and pulled out a business card. My new personal card with the address and phone number of my mansion. When you're ready to have an honest conversation about what's best for Alex and Lily, not what's convenient for Victoria or what protects the lies she's told, call me. I placed the card on the table and walked away, leaving him standing there, with his anger and his confusion and the growing realization that his children were beginning to see through the carefully constructed story he'd helped create. That evening, Lily called my personal cell phone. Grandmother, Dad says we can't meet with you anymore. He says it's confusing us and hurting Mom's feelings. How do you feel about that, sweetheart? I feel like I'm being treated like a child who can't make her own decisions about who she wants to. I know, and Alex, he's furious. He says Dad is treating us like we're too stupid to understand family dynamics, and that maybe there's a reason Mom doesn't want us to know you. Smart. Children, too smart to be fooled by lies much longer. What do you want to do? I asked. We want to keep seeing you, but we don't want to make things worse at home. Then don't make things worse at home. But remember, Lily, you're both almost 18. Soon you'll be making your own decisions about everything, including family relationships. Are you saying we should wait until we're legal adults? I'm saying that truth has a way of revealing itself, regardless of who tries to hide it. And I'm saying that I love you both enough to be patient while that happens. After we hung up, I sat in my library, surrounded by the tools of my patient revenge, and realized that the most important phase was about to begin. Victoria had overplayed her hand by trying to cut off my access to the twins. James had revealed his own weakness by issuing ultimatums he couldn't enforce. And Alex and Lily had revealed that they were ready to start making their own choices about who deserved their loyalty. The war for my grandchildren's hearts was entering its final phase, and I intended to win. 2 weeks passed without any contact from Alex or Lily. I respected their decision to avoid making their home situation more difficult, but I used the time strategically, gathering intelligence, and preparing for what I knew would be the next phase of Victoria's campaign against me. My private investigator, A discreet woman named Jennifer Walsh provided updates that confirmed what I'd suspected. James's graphic design business was indeed failing, not due to lack of talent, but due to poor business decisions driven by Victoria's insistence that he focus on prestigious clients rather than profitable ones. The company's 3 months behind on rent, Jennifer reported during our meeting in my study. They've lost 2 major clients in the past 6 months, and Victoria's been pressuring him to apply for a job at a corporate marketing firm instead of trying to save his own business. And financially, they're living on credit, cards, and the remainder of the college fund you established for the twins. Victoria's been withdrawing from it regularly, claiming it's for educational expenses, but the money's been going toward maintaining their lifestyle. I felt a cold anger settle in my chest. Not only had Victoria kept me from my grandchildren, but she'd been stealing their future to maintain her present comfort. What about the twins? How are they handling the restrictions on seeing me? From what I can observe, not well. Alex has become increasingly withdrawn, spending most of his free time in the school's engineering lab. Lily's been staying after school in the library, ostensibly working on college applications, but mostly just avoiding going home. My poor grandchildren, caught in the middle of a war they didn't understand, suffering for choices adults had made before they were old enough to have opinions about family dynamics. That afternoon, I made a decision that would accelerate everything. I called Dr. Foster at Westfield Academy. Dr. Foster, this is Sandra Rivers. I wanted to follow up on the mentorship program and discuss some additional opportunities for our participants. Of course, Mrs. Rivers, the program has been incredibly successful. The students are producing exceptional work. I'm particularly impressed with Alex Rivers' entrepreneurial project. I'd like to discuss providing additional funding to help him develop his sustainable energy prototype. That's very generous. I'm sure Alex would be thrilled. There's one condition. I'd like to present the opportunity to him directly, perhaps at a formal ceremony where his parents could attend to see their son being recognized for his achievements. I could practically hear Dr. Foster's smile through the phone. He understood exactly what I was doing, creating a situation where James and Victoria would. I have to publicly acknowledge my positive relationship with their son. I think we could arrange something like that. Perhaps a special recognition ceremony for our program participants. Perfect. And Dr. Foster, I'd like to make another donation to the school, something substantial that would require a formal announcement and perhaps some media coverage. What did you have in mind? A new science and technology wing, complete with state-of-the-art equipment, research facilities, and scholarship funds for students pursuing STEM careers. The silence on the other. The end of the line told me I'd chosen exactly the right amount, large enough to be newsworthy, significant enough to require public recognition. Mrs. Rivers, that's an extraordinary gift. The board would need to vote on it, of course, but I can't imagine they'd say no, of course, and I'd want the announcement to specifically mention that the donation was inspired by my grandson, Alex's innovative work in sustainable technology. After I hung up, I sat back in my chair with deep satisfaction. Victoria had made the mistake of trying to control information, but information like water always found a way around obstacles. Within a week, the local newspaper ran a front-page story about my donation to Westfield Academy. The headline read, "Local businesswoman donates $2 million for new science wing," with a subtitle that mentioned inspiration from grandson's innovation. The article included quotes from Dr. Foster praising both my generosity and Alex's exceptional talent, along with a photo of Alex in the school's engineering lab. But most importantly, it included my first public statement about my relationship with my grandchildren in over 13 years. I'm incredibly proud of Alex and his sister Lily. The quote read, "They represent the best of the next generation, brilliant, creative, and committed to making the world better. This donation is my way of investing in their future and the convivly futures of students like them." I was in my garden when my phone rang that evening, James's name on the caller ID. "Mom," his voice was strained. "We need to talk. I'm Lennon. Not over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow? Somewhere private. Of course. Would you like to come here? There was a long pause. Yes, but not Victoria, just me. Just you? I agreed. The next evening, James stood in my foyer looking around with the wide-eyed expression of someone seeing wealth displayed without apology for the first time. The marble, floors, crystal chandeliers, and original artwork spoke of money spent not just on comfort, but on creating an environment worthy of the success that had earned it. "My God, Mom," he said, softly. "This place is incredible. Thank you. Would you like a tour before we talk?" I led him through the main rooms, the library with its floor-to-ceiling, books and comfortable reading nooks, the dining room that could seat 20, the sun, the room with its view of the gardens, but I saved the best for last. "This is the guest wing," I said, opening the door to a beautifully appointed suite with its own sitting room, bedroom, and private bath. I had it designed with Alex and Lily in mind for when they come to visit. "Mom," his voice broke slightly, "and this," I continued, leading him to the next room, "is the art studio I had, built for Lily. Natural light, professional-grade easels, and a writing desk by the window for when she needs quiet space to work on her poetry." James stood in the middle of the studio, looking around at the carefully chosen furnishings, the inspirational artwork on the walls, the built-in bookcases filled with volumes on art, literature, and creative writing. "You built this for her," he said. It wasn't a question. "I built this whole house for them, James. Every room, every feature, every detail was planned with Alex and Lily in mind. They don't even know you." "No, but I know them. I've known them from a distance for 13 years, and I've spent every day of those years hoping that someday I'd have the chance to show them how much they mean to me." We moved to my library where I poured 2 glasses of wine and settled into chairs that faced each other across a small table. "James, why are you here?" He took a long sip of wine before answering. "Because I read that newspaper article and I realized that my mother has been more involved in my children's lives. I reached across the table and touched his hand. The first physical contact we'd had in years. "It's not too late, James, isn't it? They're almost 18. They'll be leaving for college soon. I've missed their entire childhood because I was too weak to stand up to Victoria. You haven't missed their future." And James, "They need their father to start being their father, not Victoria's husband, who happens to live in the same house." He squeezed my hand, and for a moment I saw the little boy he'd been before the world taught him that keeping peace was more important than fighting for what mattered. "What do I do, Mom? How do I fix this?" "You start by making one decision, just one, based on what you think is best for Alex and Lily, regardless of what Victoria thinks about it. And if she fights me, then you fight back, because James, some things are worth fighting for, and your children's happiness is one of them." That night, after James left, I sat in my library feeling something I hadn't experienced in over a decade, hoped that my family might actually be reparable, but I also knew that Victoria wouldn't give up without a final, desperate battle. And I was ready for war. The confrontation I'd been expecting came sooner than anticipated. 3 days after my conversation with James, I received a call from Dr. Foster that confirmed Victoria had decided to escalate the conflict. "Mrs. Rivers," he said, his voice tight with professional concern, "I'm afraid we have a situation with the mentorship program." "What kind of situation?" "Mrs. Victoria Rivers came to see me this morning. She's demanding that Alex and Lily be removed from the program immediately." I felt my jaw clench. "On what grounds?" "She claims that your involvement constitutes harassment of her family and that you're using the program to manipulate her children against their parents." "And what did you tell her?" "I told her that the program is voluntary, that both students are excelling, and that any family disputes should be resolved outside of school, but she's threatening to withdraw both children from Westfield Academy entirely if we don't comply with her demands." Victoria was making her final play, using the twins' education as leverage. It was exactly the kind of desperate move I'd been expecting from someone whose careful control was slipping away. Dr. Foster, let me ask you something. Have Alex and Lily expressed any desire to leave the program? Quite the opposite. Alex specifically asked me yesterday when he could schedule his next meeting with you to discuss the funding for his prototype. And Lily submitted a beautiful essay about finding her voice as a writer that specifically credits your mentorship. Then I suggest you tell Mrs. Rivers that her children are old enough to make their own decisions about their educational opportunities. I've tried that approach. She's quite insistent. What exactly is she? Threatening? Legal action against the school for allowing what she calls inappropriate interference in family relationships. She's also threatening to file a formal complaint with the state education board. I smiled grimly. Victoria was overreaching, and overreach was always a mistake. Dr. Foster, I want you to know that if Mrs. Rivers follows through on those threats, my legal team will fully support the school's position. You've done nothing inappropriate, and I won't allow you to be punished for providing educational opportunities to deserving students. I appreciate that, Mrs. Rivers, but I'm concerned about Alex and Lily being caught in the middle of this conflict. So am I, which is why I think it's time for them to understand exactly what they're caught in the middle of. That evening, I did something I'd never done before. I called Alex and Lily directly, being at home, knowing Victoria would likely answer. The phone rang 3 times before Victoria's voice, sharp with suspicion, said, "Rivers residence." "Victoria, this is Sandra. I'd like to speak with Alex and Lily, please." "They're not available. Are they not home, or are you not allowing them to speak with me? They're busy with homework." "Then I'll wait." "Sandra." Victoria put Alex on the phone. Now, perhaps it was the tone of absolute authority I'd perfected in boardroom negotiations, or perhaps Victoria realized that she was fighting a battle she couldn't win through intimidation. But after a moment of silence, I heard her call. "Alex, phone." "Hello." Alex's voice was cautious. "Alex, it's your grandmother. I need to speak with both you and Lily. Can you put me on speaker?" "Hold on." I heard rustling, then Lily's voice saying, "Hi, grandmother." "Hello, sweetheart. I'm calling because I understand your mother has asked the school to remove you both from the mentorship program." "She did what?" Alex's voice rose with indignation. "She went to Dr. Foster today and demanded that you be withdrawn from the program immediately. She can't do that." Lily's voice was equally angry. "That program is the best thing that's happened to us all. Actually, she can do that. You're both still minors, and she has the legal right to make educational decisions for you." "That's not fair," Alex said. "We're 17. We should get to choose our own academic opportunities." "You're absolutely right. Which is why I'm calling to give you some information you need to make informed decisions about your own futures." "What kind of information?" Lily asked. I took a deep breath, knowing that what I was about to do would irrevocably change their relationship with their mother. "I'm going to tell you the truth about why I haven't been part of your lives for the past 13 years. "Grandmother," Alex said, quietly. "Are you sure you want to do this over the phone?" "I'm sure because tomorrow your mother might succeed in cutting off our communication entirely, and you deserve to hear this from me, rather than figuring it out on your own years from now." For the next 30 minutes, I told them everything. The returned birthday cards, the blocked phone calls, the college fund Victoria had been secretly accessing, my repeated attempts to visit that had been rebuffed, and, most importantly, the lies they'd been told about my reasons for being absent. "You mean," Lily said, her voice small and hurt, "you've been trying to contact us this whole time, every birthday, every Christmas, every major holiday for 13 years, and Mom has been hiding your letters and cards?" Alex asked. "Yes. Why?" The pain in Lily's voice was heartbreaking. Why would she do that? Because she was afraid that if you knew me, you might love me. And she was afraid that if you loved me, there wouldn't be enough love left for her. "But that doesn't make sense," Alex said. Love isn't finite. You can love lots of people without loving any of them less. Smart boy. He understood something his mother had never learned. You're absolutely right, Alex. But some people, I don't understand that. Some people think love is a competition instead of a gift. What about Dad? Lily asked. Does he know what Mom has been doing? Your father made the choice 13 years ago to keep peace in his marriage rather than fight for my relationship with you. He's been regretting that choice lately. How do you know? Because we had dinner together 3 nights ago. He came to my house, saw the rooms I've built for you, and realized what he's allowed you to miss out on. There was a long silence, and I could hear whispered conversation between the twins. Grandmother, Alex said finally, we want to come see your house. We want to see the rooms you built for us. I would love that, but you'll need to discuss it with your parents first. What if they say no? Lily asked. Then you'll have to decide how important it is to you to make your own choices about family relationships. What do you mean? I mean that in less than a year, you'll both be 18 years old. You'll be legal adults who can decide for yourselves who you want to have relationships with and how you want to spend your time. Are you saying I should wait until we're 18? Alex asked. I'm saying that sometimes the most loving thing parents can do is trust their children to make good decisions, even when those decisions aren't the ones the parents would choose. After we hung up, I sat in my library knowing that I just crossed a line from which there would be no return. I'd given Alex and Lily information that would fundamentally change how they saw their family, their childhood, and their mother. Victoria would never forgive me for it. But more importantly, Alex and Lily would never forgive Victoria for the lies they'd now recognized as lies. The next morning I was in my garden when Thomas announced that I had visitors at the gate. Through the security monitor, I saw Alex and Lily standing beside a car I didn't recognize, not James's sedan or Victoria's SUV. Let them in, I said, my heart racing with anticipation and concern. And Thomas, make sure the gates close securely behind them. As they walked up the circular driveway toward my front door, I could see the determination in their posture. These weren't children sneaking around behind their parents' backs. These were young adults making a conscious choice about their own relationships. Grandmother, Lily said as I opened the door. We borrowed our neighbor's car. Mom and Dad think we're at the library. Are you sure if you want to be here? This will escalate the conflict at home. We're sure, Alex said firmly. We've talked about it all night. We're tired of being treated like children who can't handle the truth about our own family. I hugged them both. The first time I'd held my grandchildren in 13 years and felt something break open in my chest that I'd kept carefully locked away for more than a decade. Welcome home? I whispered against Lily's hair, which smelled like vanilla and teenage dreams. Home? She asked, pulling back to look at me. This house was built for you. I said simply, both of you. Every room, every detail, every comfort was chosen, with the hope that someday you'd want to be here. For the next 3 hours, I gave them the tour I'd been imagining for years. Alex marveled at the library's technical books and comfortable reading nooks. Lily wept when she saw the art studio with its perfect northern light and inspirational quotes painted on the walls. But it was in my study, surrounded by the evidence of my business success and my careful documentation of their achievements, that they truly understood what they'd been kept from. You have newspaper clippings of every award we've ever won, Alex said, looking through the scrapbooks I'd maintained from afar. You have copies of poems I published in literary magazines that I didn't even know you'd seen, Lily added, her voice full of wonder. I've been watching you grow up from a distance, I said, celebrating your successes, worrying about your challenges, and loving you. Both every single day for 13 years. Why didn't you fight harder to see us? Alex asked, not accusingly, but with genuine curiosity, because I was afraid that if I pushed too hard, your parents would move even farther away. I was afraid that fighting for you would result in losing you completely. And now, You're old enough to understand the difference between fighting for someone and fighting with someone. And I'm old enough to know that some things are worth the risk. We were sitting in my sunroom sharing tea and the stories we'd never been able to share when my security system alerted me to a car at the gate. Through the monitor, I saw James's sedan with both him and Victoria inside, both looking grim and determined. Your parents are here, I told the twins. We know they'd figure. Hang out where we were eventually, Lily said. We left them a note. What kind of note? We told them we were visiting our grandmother and that we'd be home for dinner, Alex said. We also told them that we wanted to have a family meeting tonight to discuss some things we'd learned about our family history. Smart children. They weren't hiding their choices or sneaking around. They were being direct about their decisions, their expectations. Are you ready for what comes next? I asked. We're ready, Lily said firmly. We're tired of living in a family where truth is optional. I pressed the button to open the gates and watched through the window as James and Victoria walked up my driveway like soldiers approaching enemy territory. The war for my grandchildren was about to reach its climax, and for the first time in 13 years, I had my grandchildren beside me when the battle began. Victoria entered my home like a hurricane in designer clothing. Her perfectly styled hair and flawless makeup, unable to disguise the fury radiating from every pore. Alex, Lily, she called out before she was fully through the door. We're leaving now. No, Lily said calmly from where she sat beside me in the sunroom. We're not. Victoria stopped short, clearly not expecting direct defiance. Behind her, James looked torn between his wife's anger and what appeared to be genuine curiosity about his children's choice. What did you just say to me? Victoria's voice rose dangerously. I said we're not leaving, Lily repeated. James. Victoria's voice cracked with panic. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. For 17 years, I've made decisions about our children based on what you thought was best. Maybe it's time I listen to what they think is best. Alex and Lily exchanged a look of surprised hope, clearly not expecting support from their father. Dad, Alex said carefully, we know this is complicated. We know there's history between you and grandmother that we don't fully understand. But Lily continued, we're old enough to make our own decisions about who we want to have relationships with. Victoria looked back and forth between her husband and children, realizing that her usual tactics weren't working. Fine, she said, her voice taking on the manipulative sweetness I remembered from her early visits to my penthouse. Let's all sit down and discuss this like adults. She moved toward the sunroom as if she owned it, clearly intending to take control of the conversation, but I had no intention of allowing that. Victoria, I said calmly, I don't recall inviting you to sit down. She stopped mid-step. Excuse me, this is my home. Alex and Lily are here as my invited guests. You and James are here as what? Exactly? We're here as their parents. Are you? Because parents who respect their children might have called to arrange a visit rather than arriving uninvited to demand that their nearly adult children leave a place they chose to be. James cleared his throat. Mom, we came because we were worried. The twins left a note saying they were coming to see you, but they've never been here before, because Victoria wasn't allowed to invite them before. But you're right. Need to be concerned about their safety. Would you like a tour of the house so you can see the environment your children are in? It was a masterful move. By framing it as parental concern, rather than confrontation, I was forcing them to either accept my hospitality or reveal their true motivations. That would be nice, James said, ignoring Victoria's sharp look. For the next 30 minutes, I led them through my mansion the same way I'd shown the twins, but with a different narrative. Where I'd shown Alex and Lily rooms designed for their comfort and happiness, I showed James and Victoria evidence of my success, my independence, and my ability to provide for my grandchildren in ways their parents never could. This is the guest wing, I said, opening the doors to the beautifully appointed suites. Alex and Lily are welcome here anytime, for study sessions, creative projects, or just when they need quiet space to think. It's beautiful, James said genuinely. But Mom, they have rooms at home, do they? Or do they have rooms in Victoria's house where they're allowed to exist according to her rules and preferences? Victoria's jaw tightened. They have loving homes where their parents, I interrupted, one of whom has been lying to them about their grandmother for 13 years. I protected them from confusion and hurt. You protected yourself from competition. The words hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. This was the moment I'd been building toward for months, when Victoria's carefully constructed narrative would collapse under the weight of obvious truth. "That's not true," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Isn't it? Let's examine your protection, Victoria. You protected them from birthday cards that wished them happiness. You protected them from Christmas gifts, chosen with love. You protected them from a grandmother who wanted to celebrate their achievements and support their dreams. I protected them from someone who tried to break up their parents' marriage. I tried to protect my son from someone who was isolating him from everyone who loved him. There's a difference." Lily stepped forward, her young voice cutting through the adult anger with startling clarity. "Mom, can I ask you something?" Victoria turned to her daughter with desperate hope. "Of course, sweetheart. Why didn't you ever tell us that grandmother is trying to contact us?" "Because I knew it would." "Confuse you? That's not an answer. Why didn't you let us decide for ourselves whether we wanted to be confused?" The question was so direct, so mature that Victoria seemed stunned. "Because you were children. We've been children for 17 years, Alex said quietly. "At what point were you planning to trust us to handle complicated family relationships? When you were old enough to understand." "We're old enough now," Lily interrupted. "We're old enough to understand that you've been making choices for us that maybe we should have been part of making." Victoria looked around the room desperately, seeking support from James, but he was staring at his children with something that looked like pride mixed with regret. "James," she pleaded, "tell them they don't understand the whole situation." "What part don't they understand?" he asked quietly. "They don't understand how manipulative she can be, how she uses money and guilt to control people, like you've been using our dependence on you to control us?" Alex asked. The question was devastating in its simplicity. Victoria stared at her son as if he'd slapped her. "I have never controlled you. I've guided you. I've protected you. 5. You've made every major decision about our lives without asking what we wanted," Lily said. "Where we lived, which schools we attended, which activities we could participate in, who we could be friends with, and apparently which family members we could know. I did what I thought was best." "For who?" Alex asked. "Best for us or best for you?" The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria looked around the room at her children who were questioning her authority, at her husband who was failing to support her, at me sitting calmly in my chair like a queen holding court. "This is all your fault," she said, turning on me with renewed fury. "You've poisoned them against me. You've turned my own children into strangers. I've told them the truth, Victoria. If the truth turns them against you, perhaps the problem isn't the truth. The truth is that you're a bitter old woman who can't stand that your son chose someone else over you. Is that what you think this is about? Competition for James's affection. No, that's what this is about." I stood up slowly with the deliberate grace I'd perfected in boardrooms. "Victoria, you're absolutely right that this is about competition, but you've misunderstood the competition entirely." "What do you mean? I'm not competing with you for James's love. I'm competing with you for my grandchildren's respect. And after 17 years of lying to them, controlling them, and treating them like possessions rather than people, I'm winning." The color drained from her face as she finally understood what had been happening. "You planned this," she whispered. "All of it. The mentorship program, the donations, the meetings with the twins. You planned all of it. I plan to give my grandchildren opportunities to know me as I really am, rather than as you've portrayed me. If that threatened your relationship with them, perhaps you should examine why the truth is so dangerous to your version of family." Victoria looked at Alex and Lily with something approaching desperation. "Please," she said, her voice breaking. "I love you both so much. Everything I've done has been because I love you. We know you love us, Mom," Lily said gently. "But love doesn't justify lies, and love doesn't require us to choose between you and Grandmother," Alex added. "We should be able to love both of you. But if we have to choose," Lily said quietly, "we need you to know that we're going to choose truth over comfort. We're going to choose the relationships that treat us like intelligent people, capable of making our own decisions." Victoria stared at her daughter, this poised, articulate young woman who just delivered an ultimatum with devastating kindness. "What are you saying?" "We're saying that we want Grandmother in our lives," Alex said. "We want to know her, spend time with her, and build the relationship we should have had all along. And if you can't accept that," Lily continued, "then you're going to have to decide whether your need to control us is more important than your love for us." As I watched Victoria realize that she was losing the war she'd started 13 years ago, I felt not triumph, but a deep sadness for the damage that had been done to everyone involved. The twins were right. They shouldn't have to choose between their mother and their grandmother. But Victoria had made that choice inevitable, by refusing to share them, by lying about me, and by treating their love like a finite resource that had to be hoarded, rather than a renewable gift that grew stronger when shared. "James," she turned to her husband one last time, "please tell them they're making a mistake." James looked at his wife, then at his children, then at me. The 3 generations of his family that had been torn apart by fear and control, and the assumption that love was something that could be lost, rather than something that multiplied when given freely. I think he said slowly that the mistake was made 13 years ago when we decided that keeping you happy was more important than doing what was right for our children. It was the moment Victoria finally understood that she had lost not just her grandchildren, but her husband as well. And as I watched her face crumble with the realization that her carefully constructed world was collapsing around her, I felt something I hadn't expected: pity. The weeks following that confrontation unfolded with the inexorable logic of consequences, finally catching up to choices made years earlier. Victoria, faced with the reality that her control over her family was dissolving, made increasingly desperate attempts to reassert her authority. She tried, forbidding Alex and Lily from visiting me, a command they politely ignored, pointing out that they were nearly 18 and capable of making their own decisions about how to spend their free time. She attempted to ground them for disrespecting her authority, a punishment that proved impossible to enforce when James refused to support it. She even went so far as to threaten to cut off their college funding, only to discover that the money she'd been relying on had been mine all along, and that I'd already established new accounts in both twins' names that she had no access to. But it was her final, and most desperate gambit that sealed her fate permanently. I was in my library one evening, helping Alex refine his business plan for the sustainable energy prototype, when my attorney Harold called. "Sandra," he said without preamble, "you need to know that Victoria Rivers has filed a petition with a family court." "What kind of petition?" "She's seeking a restraining order against you on behalf of her minor children. She's claiming that you're psychologically manipulating them, and that your influence constitutes a threat to their well-being." I felt a cold anger settle in my chest. "On what evidence?" "Apparently she's claiming that your sudden involvement in their lives represent the pattern of predatory behavior designed to alienate them from their parents." "And what does the court say about this?" "The judge has scheduled a hearing for next week. Alex and Lily will need to testify about their relationship with you and whether they feel manipulated or threatened." After I hung up, I looked at Alex, who had clearly overheard enough of the conversation to understand what was happening. "She's trying to get a court in order to keep us away from you, isn't she?" he said quietly. "Yes. Can she do that?" "She can try. But Alex, the judge is going to want to hear from both you and Lily about how you feel about our relationship. Are you prepared for that?" He sat down his calculator and looked at me with a serious expression that reminded me so much of his grandfather. Grandmother, I've spent the last month getting to know the most generous, intelligent, and loving person I've ever met. Someone who supported my dreams, encouraged my ambitions, and treated me like an adult capable of making good decisions. And I'm not going to let anyone, not even Mom, take that away from me. The hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I arrived at the courthouse dressed in my finest navy suit and pearls, accompanied by Harold, and carrying a briefcase full of evidence that I hoped wouldn't be necessary to use. Victoria sat across the courtroom with her own attorney, looking pale but determined. James sat beside her, though his body language suggested he was there under duress rather than conviction. Judge Patricia Morrison was a woman in her 52nd, with the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen every possible variation of family dysfunction. She reviewed the petition with careful attention before looking up at the assembled parties. "Mrs. Victoria Rivers," she said, "you're seeking a restraining order to prevent Mrs. Sandra Rivers from having contact with your minor children, Alex and Lily Rivers, both age 17. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor. And the basis for this request, Mrs. Rivers has been using her wealth to manipulate my children against me. She's been filling their heads with lies about their family and trying to turn them against their parents." Judge Morrison turned to me. "Mrs. Sandra Rivers, how do you respond to these allegations?" "Your Honor, I've been attempting to build a relationship with my grandchildren after being estranged from them for 13 years. Every interaction I've had with Alex and Lily has been appropriate, educational, and conducted with their parents' knowledge. Mrs. Victoria Rivers, can you provide specific examples of this alleged manipulation?" Victoria launched into a detailed account of my involvement in the twins' lives, the mentorship program, the donations to their school, the visits to my home. But as she spoke, I realized she was making my case for me. Every example she gave demonstrated my genuine interest in the twins' education and well-being. "Mrs. Rivers," the judge said when Victoria finished, "these activities you've described, mentoring, educational support, providing opportunities for academic advancement, these don't sound like manipulation. They sound like grandparenting." Victoria's attorney leaned forward. "Your Honor, Mrs. Rivers has been absent from these children's lives for 13 years. Her sudden intensive involvement suggests ulterior motives. And what would those motives be? To undermine the parental authority of Mr. and Mrs. Rivers and to alienate the children from their mother." Judge Morrison made some notes before speaking again. "I'd like to hear from Alex and Lily themselves. Alex Rivers, please approach the bench." Alex stood up with a quiet confidence I'd come to admire, walking to the front of the courtroom with his shoulders straight and his head high. "Alex, Judge," Morrison said gently, "I want you to tell me in your own words about your relationship with your grandmother." "Your Honor, 3 months ago, I didn't know my grandmother at all. I thought she was someone who hadn't wanted to be part of our lives. But when I met her through the school mentorship program, I discovered that she's been trying to contact my sister and me for 13 years. How did that make you feel? Confused at first, then hurt that we'd been lied to, then grateful that she never gave up on us. Do you feel that your grandmother has manipulated you or pressured you in any way?" "No, Your Honor. She's treated me like an intelligent person capable of making my own decisions. She supported my dreams and helped me think about my future in ways that no one else ever has." "And how do you feel about your relationship with your parents?" Alex glanced at his father, then at Victoria before answering carefully. "I love my parents, but I've learned that love doesn't mean accepting lies or giving up my right to make decisions about my own relationships." Judge Morrison nodded. "Lily Rivers, please approach." Lily walked forward, with the same quiet dignity her brother had shown, and I felt my heart swell with pride for these remarkable young people. "Lily, same question. Tell me about your relationship with your grandmother." "Your Honor, my grandmother has given me something I didn't even know I was missing, unconditional support for who I am rather than who someone else thinks I should be." Can you elaborate? She celebrates my writing, encourages my creativity, and treats my ideas like they matter. She's built spaces in her home specifically for my interests, and she's never once suggested that I should be different than I am. Do you feel manipulated by her? No, Your Honor. And feel seen by her. The simple honesty of that statement seemed to impact everyone in the courtroom. And what about your relationship with your parents? Lily was quiet for a moment before answering. I love my parents, but I've realized that my mom's love comes with conditions. She loves me when I agree with her, when I make choices she approves of, when I don't ask questions that make her uncomfortable. And your grandmother's love doesn't have conditions. Judge Morrison made more notes before addressing Victoria directly. Mrs. Rivers, I've listened to your concerns, but I've also listened to your children. These are 7-year-old students who will be legal adults in less than a year. They have been very clear. Judge Morrison's voice carried across the hushed courtroom, calm but unyielding. They want a relationship with their grandmother. They do not feel manipulated, nor do they feel threatened by her. He turned his gaze to Victoria, who sat rigid, her knuckles white against the polished wood of the table. Furthermore, the evidence you've presented does not support claims of coercion. Educational support, mentorship, and family bonding are not grounds for a restraining order. Victoria's carefully crafted poise shattered. Her face crumpled, the last fragments of her control slipping away as the judge delivered the words that sealed her defeat. Your petition is denied. The sound landed like a gavel strike that echoed through every corner of her hollow victory. These young people, Judge Morrison continued firmly, are old enough to make their own choices about family, and there is no evidence that Mrs. Sandra Rivers poses any threat to their well-being. When we left the courthouse, the air outside smelled of fresh rain, sharp and cleansing. Victoria approached me one last time, her voice stripped of confidence. "This isn't over," she whispered, though the words trembled, hollow now. "Yes, Victoria," I answered, calm as stone. "It is. You've lost the legal battle. You've lost the moral high ground. And most importantly, you've lost the trust of your children." "They're still my children," she hissed weakly. "Yes," I agreed gently. "They always will be. But they are also my grandchildren, and they are old enough now to decide what that means." For the first time, she had no reply. She turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing with isolation of her own making. Watching her, I didn't feel triumph. I felt sorrow for the years wasted, for the milestones erased by her need for control. But when I looked beside me and saw Alex and Lily, tall, confident, unafraid, I knew that what had been lost was finally being reclaimed. 1 year later, the garden had become a stage for rebirth. Alex stood proudly in the sunlight, presenting his sustainable energy prototype to a circle of investors. At just 18, his ideas commanded the attention of men twice his age. His voice was clear, his vision undeniable. I watched him, my chest swelling with quiet pride, as I saw not just my grandson but a man stepping boldly into his future. At a nearby table, Lily bent over her laptop, working on her college essays. She had already been accepted into 3 prestigious universities. Her problem now was not a lack of options but choosing which brilliant path to walk. Her dream of becoming a writer and social activist glowed in every line she wrote. And James, my son, lived now in the pool house, not as an exile, but as a man rebuilding his life, rediscovering the pieces of himself buried for years beneath Victoria's expectations. His graphic design business finally thrived, fueled by his own creative vision, not by anyone else's demands. Victoria, meanwhile, had retreated to her sister's house in another state. In the past year, the twins had seen her only twice. Awkward meetings filled with stiff politeness, shadowed by her inability to face the damage she had done. "She says she did everything out of love," Lily had told me quietly after one of those visits. Then, with a wisdom beyond her years, she added, "But she still doesn't understand that love and possession are not the same thing." Alex glanced up from his presentation, caught my eye, and smiled a small, knowing smile that melted years of distance in an instant. In 1 year, I had watched him transform from a withdrawn boy into a young man who believed in his own brilliance. And Lily, once cautious and afraid of her own voice, had become a fearless advocate for truth. She wrote with fire, and her words were already being recognized nationally. But beyond their success, it was their character that filled me with pride. Honest, kind, strong enough to face pain and turn it into purpose. Mrs. Rivers, one of the investors asked me that afternoon, Alex says you were his first business mentor. What do you think of his potential? I looked at my grandson, tall, confident, radiant with possibility. I think Alex represents what happens when young people are given freedom to dream without limits. The funding he's asking for is nothing compared to the worth of what he will create in the years ahead. The investors exchanged impressed looks. My words carried weight, and I knew I had opened doors for him no one could close. Later, at the garden table where we shared so many evenings, Alex leaned back, grinning. How do you think it went? I think you'll have your choice of offers, I said. The question is, which one serves your long-term goals? Lily looked around, her eyes wide with wonder. A year ago, we didn't even know you existed. You always existed, I told her softly. I just had to wait until you found your way back. Alex's expression grew serious. Do you think Mom will ever understand what she lost? It was a question he had asked many times. My answer never changed. She loves you both, I believe that. But she will never understand that real love means letting people choose for themselves, even when those choices don't serve her. Lily hesitated, then asked, Do you forgive her? Forgiveness. The word carried 1,000 weights. I don't forgive the lies, I said at last. I don't forgive the years stolen, but I am grateful for what those years gave you: strength, independence, wisdom. Without the pain, perhaps you wouldn't be the extraordinary people you are now. So the pain was worth it? Lily whispered. I think the pain taught you to value truth, I said, and that will serve you far longer than comfort ever could. As the sun lowered, James joined us, carrying a bottle of wine. His face was lighter now, his spirit unburdened. How did it go? He asked. Grandmother thinks I'll have multiple offers, Alex said with quiet pride. I don't think it, I corrected gently. I know it. We shared food, laughter, and conversation under the fading sky. For the first time in 13 years, I felt what had been missing: family. Victoria had been wrong about love her whole life. She thought love was possession, something you controlled. But love, real love, multiplies. The more you give, the more it grows. The more it is shared, the more powerful it becomes. As we cleared the table, Lily looked at me with eyes full of light. Grandmother, are you happy with how it all turned out? I looked at them, my son, my grandchildren. Free, strong, loved, without condition. I'm happy, I said simply. Because you know your worth, because you are free to become who you were meant to be, and because you know you are loved completely, without limits. Alex pressed softly. But are you at peace? I thought for a long moment. Was this peace, or simply victory? Finally, I nodded. I am satisfied. I set out to give you back what was stolen, the love of a grandmother who believes in you, and I succeeded. As we walked into the house together, I thought of legacy. Not just wealth or opportunity, though I had given them both, but something greater. The truth that love built on trust and respect endures forever. Victoria had lost everything because she tried to control what should have been nurtured. I had reclaimed everything because I trusted, I supported, I loved without condition. Some wounds never heal, but sometimes they transform. They become strength. They become wisdom. They become love, fierce enough to last generations. And as I stood in my library that night, surrounded by the evidence of both the battles I had fought and the love I had reclaimed, I felt something deeper than triumph. Peace. The war was over. Truth had outlived the lies. Love had conquered control. And my grandchildren, brilliant, fearless, and free, would carry that victory into their futures.